Coming up on the WAC podcast, it's already halfway through December. We're in Dallas, so it hasn't snowed yet, but it snowed a lot of different places I've seen all over the place. So we're in kind of that conference basketball getting underway in a couple weeks after we had the two games. We're going to talk with Lane Lord. You're going to talk with Lane Lord. I'm pointing to Kendra Sheehan as they host Texas. The Longhorns coming to Edinburgh next week, and they'll talk about that and a lot more. We had some big wins over the past week. We're going to break it down with Tony Jones and men's basketball. That's all ahead on the WAC podcast.
Dun, 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 dun. This WAC podcast is brought to you by our friends at University Credit Union, the official financial institution partner of the Western Athletic Conference. Dun, dun, dun. Mid-December. No snow in Texas, like you mentioned. It's beautiful. I mean, I'm going for strolls. Not really, because by the time I leave work, now the sun's setting, it's pretty depressing. But, you know, it's like 60s still. It's insane. It's
not
incredible.
As dark as Denver, though, this time of year. Like 4:30, pitch dark.
Yeah, that's true.
So it is a little light. But, yeah, people are so interested in light in Denver versus light in Dallas. I think, right? People listening to the show? Probably not. They probably want to hear about WAC basketball.
WAC basket. Why don't but on the agenda, on the rundown,
we added something to the rundown.
We were going to break down the Commissioner's Cup.
Commissioners. Oh yeah, let's start with the Commissioner's Cup. Thank you for that. So this is after the fall sports have ended.
Yes.
And California Baptist, who had a sensational fall, they won WAC men's cross country, almost had a perfect score. They won the WAC men's soccer tournament, right?
Yes.
So they are in first place as we finish out the fall.
Yeah, no, it's pretty exciting. Utah Valley's right behind them. And then Grand Canyon, of course, in third, who won it last year. Utah Tech right behind. And so these will just keep getting updated as, you know, these are fall numbers. And as we move to the winter sports and spring, you never know what's going to happen. But it is pretty exciting.
So Utah Valley won the women's cross country championship. Grand Canyon won the volleyball tournament championship. But Utah Tech, how about the Trailblazers checking in at number 4 with Southern Utah right behind them?
I know. Utah Tech making some waves in the basketball world as well, as we tie it over into our basketball talk.
Well, how about
Transition
first?
Rough.
How about we talk about Violet Palmer?
Oh, yeah.
She is a Hall of Famer. We knew that already. But
she's a Hall of Famer in our eyes.
It's now, and I know she's been in several Hall of Fames. Halls of Fame?
Yes.
Halls of Fame.
Hall of Fames.
Halls of Fame.
Hall of Fames.
Halls of Fame?
Hall.
This is so good so far. So congratulations to Violet. You talked to her on our WAC basketball preview show. Violet, for those of you who don't know, she is our coordinator of women's basketball officials. She also does several other conferences. She is the first female NBA official. She is, what's her Twitter handle? It's like first NBA first lady.
Oh yeah.
And she knows everybody. She's done it all, and she has a great story to tell. And you had a great conversation with her, and couldn't be happier for her getting into the Women's College Basketball Hall of Fame.
I mean, just pretty impressive when you look at what she's done over her career. Started 1997 as a referee, and just 9 years later was the first woman to officiate an NBA playoff game, 2006. And then, of course, 2014 did that NBA All-Star game as well. Just a really cool perspective on, you know, how the sport has changed. We also talked to her before about, you know, just the women's sports in general as they continue to rise, especially in basketball, and all the attention that over social media, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, all those wonderful athletes, Paige Buckets has brought to women's basketball.
And she was also honored with the 2023 Gold Whistle Award presented by the National Association of Sports Officials. That's bestowed upon those who have made significant contributions to the betterment of officiating. By the way, back in the day, she was also a pretty good basketball player in D2. Just had to throw that in.
Just had to throw it in. I mean, you don't become a great official without knowing the game inside and out.
And when you look up Violet Palmer when she was officiating, you see pictures of her and Kobe. You see pictures of her and LeBron. So she knows everybody. Everybody respects her, and congratulations to her.
Very, very exciting as we turn the page to WAC basketball as we're back in non-conference play, continuing all the way until first week of January. And we've had some pretty exciting wins. We've had a few whacked wins, if you will, and those are very important wins that are on our social media. And kind of crazy when you look at the early standings and you see California Baptist 8-0 right now, 8-game win streak, obviously.
Yeah, on the women's side, CBU undefeated. We saw this happen a few years ago. It kind of feels like that again because Jared Olson is a very good coach, and he just had a coaching milestone, as I believe, right?
Did he now?
I think he did. As we look this up, it's such good radio.
I mean, you guys would be looking it up yourself, so we're doing it for you.
So anyway, they're 8-0 to start the season. They are 2-0 in the WAC, and they have our WAC Ticket Smarter Players of the Week.
Swept them this week. Swept them. Chloe Webb and Chloe Lemon. Now, not to be confused as one starts with a C, Chloe Webb, and the other starts with a K. But, you know, Webb has just been on fire. My goodness.
Yeah.
25 points on the game at Utah Tech. Or 25, average 25 points
per game
at Utah Tech and Pepperdine. And
6 rebounds.
She currently leads the conference in steals as well and scoring per game.
So she is doing some work, as they say.
Now, Lemon, how about that? Freshman guard, averaged 11.5 points, 3 rebounds, 1.5 steals. And so, yeah, my goodness. I mean, you always wonder, hey, what are the newcomers going to bring? Well, Chloe Lemon's bringing it.
She is. And did you ever find that little tidbit about
400 career NCAA
wins?
Yes. Winning is a habit. Love that tweet, California Baptist Social Squad.
So they are leading the conference at 8-0. Grand Canyon right behind them 7-2, 2-0 in the WAC. Stephen F. Austin 2-0 in the WAC. They are 6-3 overall. Grand Canyon also on a 5-game win streak that includes a win over a WAC'd opponent, Pac-12 Arizona State.
Oh yeah, 66-59 at Arizona State, which is even tougher. And you look at 4 players in double figures. Olivia Lane has just really come on, and I remember her last year. She was new to the program last year, so this is her second season. And she had been battling a knee injury, I believe, for quite some time. And so she was kind of battling through that last year. So, I mean, she's been a force. Double, 18 points, 13 rebounds in that. I believe she also transferred in. Can't quote me on this. I want to say, and I'm going to look it up.
So, I mean, you can hear her typing.
You can hear me typing because part of me wants to say North Dakota, and Olivia Lane is going to be listening and say, what? Are you kidding me? I did not. No, it was North Dakota. Ding, ding, ding.
Such a good memory.
Oh my goodness. Yes. 3 years at North Dakota.
So GCU defeating Arizona State 66-59. We had a takeover on our Instagram page last week by Stephen F. Austin women's basketball as they were traveling to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama, and they didn't win, but they did play the Crimson Tide rather closely. They were actually up in the second half, SFA was, before losing 74-69. Destiny Lombard was in charge of that said takeover, scores 19 points in that. So shout out to Destiny, and a reminder to anyone, if we ask you, hey, do you want to do the WAC Instagram takeover? Look at what Destiny did.
You could have a big, big game. Yeah, and those are so fun to watch and see, you know, oh, you get the bus ride or you get the plane, and this is what the warm-up is, and these are the pregame meals. I love those, all the little things that, you know, we ask student athletes about afterwards and they explain them, but to see it on our Instagram is pretty cool. So shout out to Destiny Lombard. I know you got a lot on your plate for game day, and juggling our social media was awesome.
How about Utah Valley and the game they had against Utah State of the Mountain West, a group of 5 winning by 30,
No,
68-38.
I think that was also a big win for Utah Valley. I watched one of I believe it was their first game that they played. They played at BYU. It was when I was at Utah Valley for the women's volleyball championship. And, they got a lot of new pieces, and putting them all together is tough. You got Jenna Dick, who had 12 points, Allie Criddle, 13 points. This is a team, don't count them out. They're where are they in the standings right now? I'll tell you where. They're pretty close to the bottom. But that's just
They're
because,
kind of in the middle on the net, though, I believe.
yeah.
And then we also saw Southern Utah beat New Mexico, also the Mountain West, 58-40. So a couple of pretty big wins by some WAC schools there.
Yeah, no, it's been nice to see our women's basketball teams continue to elevate just in general for the conference. And as we talk a little bit with Tony Jones about how our men's basketball continues to rise in the conference rankings, and our women's basketball is on their way and working towards that as well, continuing to grow and develop and create a league that is really, really strong top to bottom.
And you're going to talk to Lane Lord in our final segment today. And Coach Lord talks about they're going to be hosting Texas, huge game next Wednesday, but we're seeing quite a few Power 5 schools coming to WAC schools to play women's basketball in the coming weeks. Southern Utah going to be hosting Utah on Saturday at the Huntsman Center, Cedar City, Iowa, 5:00 Mountain Time, the Utes at Southern Utah.
Now, one of the things, I'm going to go back into something I saw on social media last week. Dawn Staley, South Carolina
coach.
She
played at Temple.
Yes.
Yeah.
They played, I don't remember what the program was, but it was a mid-major.
Yeah.
And someone had asked her, hey, why are you scheduling these games? And she was like, when I was a coach back in the day at a mid-major rising program, I had coaches reach out to me and say, hey, look, I love what you're doing. I love the development of this program, the trajectory. I want to give you guys the chance to play some top talent, grow your program, grow the players, get a chance to, match up against really, really top talented players, really, really top talent. And so I almost, Lane Lord had talked about, we'll hear it actually about the connection with Texas, but it's pretty cool because, if you're going on the road or big programs are coming to you, I mean, it means that those coaches are recognizing,
yes,
maybe that, hey, this is a growing program. Let's give them a chance to, you might not come out with a win, but what you'll learn is great. And the players getting that experience and stuff. And so, maybe, I don't know what's going on with all these coaches, but, I mean, if you're looking at coming to our schools, we're growing programs.
Absolutely. Dawn Staley coached at Temple before she was at South Carolina. She actually played at Virginia.
I
knew I had something wrong there, but one of the greatest players of all time, one of the greatest coaches of all time. You don't see that every day either.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
All right. That's pretty good women's basketball talk. When we come back, we're going to talk some men's hoops with Tony Jones on the WAC podcast.
Don't go anywhere. No.
Welcome back to the WAC podcast. Eric Danner, Kendra Sheehan, now joined by Tony Jones, who is our master of men's basketball knowledge.
Absolutely.
One of them. Actually, we have several.
I was just going to say, I can't claim that.
One of them.
You can, and you will. Just kidding.
So, Tony, we're here mid-December already. It's hard to believe. Christmas just a few weeks away for those folks celebrating Christmas. Then New Year's, and then we're going to be back into WAC play. We had an interesting situation with the schedule this year where we had a week of WAC action. Kendra talked to Lane Lord, the UTRGV women's coach, which is coming up in our next segment. And he talked about how much he liked the idea. And it also allowed for this Conference USA partnership in terms of scheduling, allowed some more time to get in there. But as far as first week of conference action, of course, we saw some teams maybe expected to be 2-0, but then we see some teams maybe not expected to be 2-0.
Yeah. What's interesting is even those that are unbeaten at this point, you really see the resume seeding system coming into effect and not necessarily following that order of where the records are. The first two teams in the latest update of the men's seating system from actually it was from December 12th. So from the start of this week going into this week was Grand Canyon and Tarleton State, who I would say sort of passed that eye test and have been the best teams in the conference. Then you have Utah Tech, who got off to a nice 2-0 start in conference. They're eighth right now in the resume seating. So they would be, based on that, they would be one of the last teams into the field despite being tied at the top. So it's interesting to note that at this point of the season of that's something that this conference has going for it that's a little bit different than everybody else, because there's no other league that you'd be a week into conference play with 3 teams tied and you're talking about one of the teams is, yeah, we're not sure that they're going to make the tournament at the end of the year, just kind of looking at it as a whole. So it was interesting to start early, but I think it was a nice data point for the teams to sort of see where they stack up with everybody as they hit the last of the tournaments and some of the key non-conference games around the holidays.
And of course, this year, 8 teams only getting in as opposed to virtually everybody getting in as we had last year. And that's based on the conference record. And then once they're in, then they get seeded, as we saw last year, where there was, a couple of teams that won the regular season title, but they weren't the number 1 seed because of the resume seeding system. The big game, and sorry to jump on you there, Kendra, I'm sure you had a great question.
I had a great question, and now I just feel like it's lost in the mix. You'll never hear it.
The big game last week was Grand Canyon against Liberty. 2 weeks in a row, they get to play on national TV on linear, as we call it, ESPNU. Very good game for them as they beat Liberty, who maybe, nationally, it doesn't resonate like San Diego State does, a team that was in the championship. But this was a very good team they beat, and one that's going to really help them in terms of resume seeding, in terms of Ken Palm, in terms of their net.
Just looking at the net as it was most recently updated, that's one that you can hopefully, if you're GCU, you'd like to see that hanging around in quad 1 all year. A key true road win against a good opponent from a peer conference. So that's what you want this time of the year. And, just running down their schedule, that's sort of what we've seen from them. I mean, the only defeat is on a neutral floor against South Carolina, who's been traditionally a good team going back here a number of years. You've got San Diego State win at home. You've got San Francisco on the neutral floor. You've got Liberty at Liberty. If you're GCU, you're hoping that, those 3 wins can hold up throughout the year. And, the way that the quad system works, you get a little bit more leeway for true road games compared to neutral games, compared to true home games, just to balance out that home court advantage, so to say. But I think the hope for the Lopes is that San Diego State kind of finds their way here and rights the ship a bit and continues to do what they've done the last so many years and let that win stick later in the year. GCU with 3 quad 1 wins, they're right up there in the mix with everybody in the country to this point of the season in quad 1. They're possibly not going to see any games maybe get quite to that level the rest of the year. Only time will tell. A big game coming up with Louisiana Tech here at the end of the month as we head into January. That's another, as we said, good test against a peer conference team, but that one will be a little different. It won't be on the road like it was at Liberty, so won't quite get the points there for that one, but that could be a solid quad 2 win and just kind of help build out that resume. 38 in the latest net, which is really where they want to be. And for us as a conference, that's where we'd like our leading team to be, because that means regardless of what happens in our tournament, you're going to be in the mix. And that's really all you can ask for.
A potential for a maybe 2-bid league this year, should something happen. And Grand Canyon just sitting 3.56. Next one is Tarleton State, 1.18. And, ED and I have talked a little bit about Tarleton State and what they have done and how, surprising initially from when you looked at their roster and the complete overhaul that they had, and now factor in Billy Gillespie is stepped away from the team with his medical situation that he has, doesn't know if he's going to return. So you don't even have your head honcho there, and they're still putting out wins. Do you see this just kind of carrying, over for the rest of the season? Do you expect Tarleton State to stay up in this upper half of the bracket rankings?
It's a fun team to watch play. I don't really know how to describe their style of play, but it's unlike anybody else in our league for sure. The game they played with UTRGV a few weeks ago at Wisdom Gym was possibly one of the best games we'll have in our league all year. And again, we had this kind of preview, so to say, of conference play before we get back, but I'm not sure we're going to have a game that equals that in the league the rest of the way. For that game to end in regulation, going back and forth like it did, to have a circus shot hit at one end with less than, 5, 6 seconds left, that should have been a game winner, to wind up as a buzzer beater at the other end is just, it's what you want for a finish always. And it just goes to show that again, and to shout UTRGV out of, if you kind of look at their record, look where they are in the grand scheme of things nationally, nobody's giving them any credit. And they played Tarleton to the whistle. They played GCU before that within a 10-point or so game, in a very tough, a very tough situation to host a team of that caliber and to play well and to be in striking distance with the team we're talking about who's stacking wins. So when you look at, the Ken Palms of the world and the NCAA net, it's not really showing necessarily in the numbers, but just with the eye test and as you're watching these matchups from 1 through 11, this league is strong. And for from a resume standpoint, as teams maybe start to knock each other off in conference play, that could change some things. And it's, you're not going to see these teams maybe ranked as highly nationally, but it's going to make our tournament fun. That's what I do know. The 8 teams who get in, it's going to be a fun tournament because 1 through 11, everybody matches up, and a Tarleton can compete with anybody in our league, and with the style that they play, aggressive, jumping out of the gym, getting on the glass, they could be a problem for pretty much anybody they match up with.
Yeah, and Tarleton has some big matchups ahead here as we, get back into non-league play. They will be at Tennessee. They're going to be playing Jacksonville State in that Conference USA agreement that we have, playing Conference USA teams. Also at Loyola Marymount. So those are very big games in terms of net ranking, Ken Palm, those kind of things. And Tony, in the conference rankings, we saw the WAC take a big jump last year to number 11. Currently in the Ken Palm, number 13. So pretty similar to last year, ahead of Conference USA at the moment at number 14. We see the Sun Belt number 17. So getting that Ken Palm ranking up to 13, what do you see some of the factors? I've obviously Grand Canyon beating San Diego State, some of the wins they have, but like you said, it has to be a 1 through 11 that gets that conference rank.
Sure. And the way that Ken goes through those rankings is he basically takes anyone who is expected in his model to finish at 500 or above in league. Those are the teams that he scores. So when you see the Big 12 leading the way at 17 plus whatever there's, that tells you that their top, 6 to 8 teams are all expected to be 500 or better with a plus value in their metric. So that's kind of what separates possibly the top teams from everyone else, is they have 7 or 8 really high quality teams to where, hey, we've mentioned, possibly our top 2 or 3 who are really making some waves here. But the difference that kind of separates the mid majors from those high majors is that they've got 8, 9, 10, 12 of these teams that could possibly be scoring in those type of things. But again, from where the conference was not very long ago, we're talking 2 or 3 short years ago, the WAC was in the mid 20s of that same metric, with the Division I conferences and the independents who are also factored in as well, who are schools who are unaffiliated with a conference in Division I. So to be up by, give or take 11 or 12 spots consistently now for going on 3 seasons, I think is no small feat. And that's a testament to our teams for scheduling better, but also for not only bringing in better quality games and better quality opponents, they're getting results. They're winning some of those games. And as it turns out, they're winning a majority of those games to stay kind of above the 500 mark. So it's a step in the right direction. I think coming off of 11, as you said last year, you probably want to continue that upward momentum and see if you could get into the top 10. But as you said, when you look around at the teams, or excuse me, at the conferences who are there, of the CUSAs of the world, the Atlantic 10s, American Conference, these are all leagues that have strong basketball programs, strong basketball lineage. And to be, the Ivy League also is up near the top 10 as well. That's kind of where you want to be. You want to be in the mix with those teams and kind of feel that upward momentum to possibly try to get into that top 10.
And part of the WAC resume seeding system is scheduling those big opponents. And, I think a big ding on Utah Tech was their, loss to Idaho at home, 1-point loss, which I'm sure, as we saw in the resume seeding system, they're down to 8. But how have you watched the teams, kind of embrace this resume seeding system and then begin to buy in and start to schedule a lot more big time opponents? And not only on the road, we're getting big time teams to come to our places and play our teams and compete in those.
Yeah. Even if it's a home and home, I doubt anybody's going to be racing to Phoenix to sign any deals with GCU anytime soon, and probably for good reason. Even if you're getting a home and home out of that, again, I don't know if it's worth giving up the road game, because you're going to, if it's not one of the top 10 environments in the country, I'd like to see the other 10 ahead of it. I really would. And it showed. San Diego State was rattled in that game, and that made a big difference. GCU played well, and that helped, against a very veteran team, a Final Four team. But that atmosphere put them over the top. And it's, I don't think there's going to be a lot of the high majors that are lining up for a home and home with GCU anytime soon. So that means they're possibly going to have to be going on the road to get these quality games. But as they showed with Liberty, as they've showed with some other teams here the last so many years, playing in the Arizona tip-off with some quality teams in Glendale, they're not afraid to go anywhere and play anybody. So I think that's a team you don't have to worry about. But as we kind of look through the rest of the conference, I think if you were to ask everybody, there's probably still mixed opinions, both from administration level, coaches level, about the seeding system. Just for what I kind of let off with, of if you're Utah Tech, you got two big conference wins, one of which was against your rival in Southern Utah. And as you said, you had two very close losses in non-conference play, but they're against teams that are a little ways down in the net. They're down in Ken Pom. And as such, they're down according to our seeding system. And it took Utah Tech from second to eighth based on two out-of-conference losses that were very close games. And possibly in one case, as you said, with the 1-point game, kind of a hard luck loss. But that goes to the importance on the scheduling, but also getting the results. You've got to obviously stay above 500 to be NCAA tournament eligible, but you've got to stay a few games above overall throughout the season. And that's, I think, really the point of the resume seeding system, is to schedule better, to get more Division I opponents on the schedule, to get more quality Division I opponents on the schedule, but also to try to get some of those results and, try to get toward that 18 or 20 or so wins in a year to really have yourself firmly in the conversation.
Yeah, and to Kendra's point about, getting some good teams to come in, we see Seattle U is going to be hosting Washington this Sunday. Of course, they're both in Seattle,
Sure.
But to have a Pac-12 team come into a WAC, for a road game. And then also, the Conference USA, as we mentioned, Tarleton, Jacksonville State. We're going to see New Mexico State traveling to Stephen F. Austin on Tuesday. So an old WAC matchup.
Whoa.
Way back from last year.
Woo.
We also see Liberty traveling to Utah Valley next week. Louisiana Tech will be at Seattle U. Sam Houston at Grand Canyon.
Whoa.
Another igniting the rivalry of the last year's semifinal in the WAC tournament. So in terms of some big matchups coming up this week, Tony, I know we have a couple circled. What are some games maybe you have circled on your calendar?
Yeah, I was going to say each of those are going to certainly show those teams kind of where they're at again at this point of the year. The Seattle U Washington game is always a big game there. They go to the big building at Climate Pledge Arena and pack some folks in for that. So not really a long trip either way for either team, as you said, because you're staying right in the city limits. But that will be a great test for the Red Hawks. They've kind of come out of it on the other side with a veteran team here with a 6-3 start. 8 of those games are at the Division I level, so a strong start for them. But this is going to be a real test for them to see where they're at. The Louisiana Tech game is going to be big, and kind of looking down the line after that, they'll have a few other big games with UTEP, I know, toward the end of the month, and some other teams as they're kind of closing out. So they're really going to kind of get into the meat of their non-conference schedule maybe a bit later than some of these other teams. But I think that was great scheduling by Seattle U to, schedule some winnable games early. Out of their 3 losses, there's been 3 really tough losses there. They've been in the mix in all of their games. Their offense is capable of getting as hot as anybody in the country when they're hitting their shots, and it's kind of starting to come around with their veteran roster. So I think that's really a team to watch here over the next few weeks. But the team to me that's really been the mystery the whole way has been CBU to this point. A 1-1 start with a tough loss to Utah Tech in that midweek conference game, but 6-2, I feel like they've not been talked about as much as Grand Canyon or Tarleton to this point. And they've got the results to show at 6-2. It's going to be a really big test for them as they're kind of finding their way through this next, half month or so of the non-conference season to see kind of where they're at. 1-1 in the league, just kind of above in the plus territory of the resume seeding system to keep them in the top 4. But can they keep that momentum going? Because, it's easy to see there's been some changes to that roster. There was some veteran players who still had some time left who've gone elsewhere. They've plugged and played some other players. They've got some other guys from within the conference to transfer in, and it's paying off. The Lancers are really playing great. That's, talking about home environments. That's another great environment in Riverside at their building when they get that place going. So that's a team that's kind of hard to peg right now just because there's so many new faces in CBU uniform for them this year compared to some of the players we've seen who've made an impact the last few years. But it still feels like they're still kind of where they usually are. They're in the mix. They're just in the hunt. They're maybe not at the top, but they're right in there. And I think these next few weeks are going to be really big to sort of see where they're at and for them to find their way and find their place here as we turn it back toward conference play at the start of next month.
Got a lot of more exciting matchups too, as you look at, UT Arlington at Texas Tech, Utah Tech at Colorado, Abilene Christian at Arkansas. Now this is next week, so I'm just dipping.
Whoa, I was about to
I
have a
know,
heart
right?
attack.
These are all just going down the line of just seeing.
Now, one of the ones I did want to point out was Sunday, UTEP at Abilene Christian. That'll be the return of Joe Golding, who coached
Oh
the
yes.
Wildcats to the NCAA tournament, the win over Shaka Smart in Texas. He winds up going to UTEP after that. This will be his first time back at ACU as a head coach of another team. So I imagine there'll be a lot of emotions at, but also it's a Conference USA matchup.
And I think we've seen it as we've kind of run through some of these matchups that we've had in the early going. I think that's been a very beneficial scheduling agreement. When you look at the two teams, they're two conferences, they're neck and neck in Ken Palm, have been the last so many years. That's what precipitated this sort of agreement was, let's, try to get some of these matchups on paper each year. Let's get these teams playing one another because it's not going to hurt you. We're kind of in lockstep with where we're at as conferences. And instead of playing some non-D1s or possibly some lower D1s, some longer travel, a lot of these teams are kind of within the same footprint, so to say, anymore, especially adding the Texas block to the WAC over the last few years. So I think that's been a good arrangement thus far. There's been some quality games that have come out of it as we were running through. There's still a ton of quality games that we have to see here these next few weeks. So, that should be a big one, but that's a big test for ACU. I would say that they would probably say that they're possibly not where they hoped they would be at this point of the year, with some veterans back in the mix and a tough schedule out of the gate for sure, but maybe hoping they had another game or two in hand at this point as they're getting into the stretch run of non-conference play. So what a better test, as you said, to kind of dial it back there at home and get those emotions going and see if they can get what would be a very nice win to add to their resume.
Brett Tanner coached under Joe Golding, so well, reunion, if you will, with the two coaches. I know that we had talked to Brett Tanner at Media Day, and it should be an emotional night there for both of those programs as well.
Well, Tony, want to thank you for taking some time out.
Yeah.
I know we got a busy schedule here, so want to let you go. When we come back, Kendra's going to sit down with Lane Lord from UTRGV. They're hosting the number 5 team in the country. And as we mentioned, we got WAC teams hosting some big-time teams. That's going to be one of them. That'll be next on the WAC podcast.
You don't want to miss it.
Welcome back to the WAC podcast. I'm Kendra Sheehan, now joined by UTRGV women's basketball head coach Lane Lord. And Coach, it's so good to talk to you and have you on the podcast once again. And you get a unique opportunity playing back-to-back Texas A&M Corpus Christi. You played them before, you'll play them again tomorrow. What does it mean when you play a team back-to-back in terms of, how you approach the first game with how you approach this second one, having already played them and seen what they're able to put on the floor?
Well, Corpus Christi's are what we consider our biggest rivalry game. It's the South Texas Showdown. It's the closest Division I school to us, which is about 2 hours away. So we always play Corpus twice, and it always seems to happen in the same week, and it always seems to happen right before Christmas. So we went to their place last week, I think it was our 8th game in about a 2-week span, 3-week span. We kind of have a depleted roster right now with injuries. So they took it to us last time, beat us by 20 points. And so what do you try to learn from that? Well, you try to, maximize on the things you did well, but really it's about focusing on the things we didn't do well. And number one was we shot 20% in that game. We've got to do a much better job scoring the basketball. And then also defensively, I thought we did some really good things, but when the shots aren't going in, it kind of snowballs on you. So hopefully this game against Corpus, we can put the ball in the hole. We are going to get a couple players back that we didn't have the past game. So that's going to help us just for depth purposes. And we're excited for the matchup.
Hey, you mentioned it. A lot of injuries, a depleted roster so far this year. How have you worked to adjust your lineup and plug pieces in where you see fit with so many faces that you usually would have in that starting lineup now out with a season-ending injury or just out for a few weeks and hoping they'll come back soon?
Yeah, it's been tough. We got people playing in different positions. We only had one healthy post player for the first 8 games. We're going to get a shot in the arm on this next game. We got Zariah Sango coming back for the Corpus game, 6'4". We got Deb Ogunemi, who started every game for us last year. She'll be back really playing in her first game against Corpus as well. She tried to play a couple weeks ago against Grand Canyon and just wasn't ready to go, but she's healthy and ready to go now. So just having those 2 inside presence are really going to help us. But to answer your question, we've got 3 players playing the 4 players playing the 5. We got Kate Hackrott that's played 1 through 5. We've had to really jumble this lineup just to stay competitive, but we're very positive about this team. We have high expectations still, even though we're off to a really rough start. Once we get our pieces back here after Christmas, we feel like we can still make a run in the league. So we're excited.
After a tough start to the season, what excites you most about this team, the way they're able to kind of rally around each other and just the openness and willingness to, go into a different position and do whatever the team needs to try and go in there and get the job done?
Well, we have a really neat group. We have 10 returners, actually not right now, but we have 10 returners and then we have some newcomers. But, we got to go to Puerto Rico this summer and we got to see how much talent this team really has. And so, high expectations, but in the fall, it's just like a domino effect. We just got hit with the injury bug. But the exciting thing about it is we're going to get 5 out of those 7 that have been out for the whole year back here the next week or 2 weeks after Christmas. So we feel like the excitement's still there. It's just, when you play 40 minutes and you're supposed to be playing the 3 and you're playing the 4 or the 5, just different positions, it takes a toll on you. So getting some healthy bodies back is going to be the most important thing for us. And but like I said, we're excited. We still think we have a great team. We think we have a chance to really do good things this year. So we're going to put the past behind us and just start moving forward.
And I know it's tough with the schedule, having already played 2 conference games so early in the season, and then you'll resume conference play in January. How have you as a coach had to approach the season, knowing that you have those 2 WAC games early and then, conference play gets into full effect a little bit later?
I'm probably out of the norm here, but I really like it because I think the WAC's doing a great job with us getting the conference challenge. And that's why we moved these games to the fall semester, these 2 conference games. But, scheduling is the hardest thing for us to do. And to get 2 guaranteed games every year is just huge for us. So I don't mind it at all. Of course, we had to open up at Grand Canyon, then came home and played Tarleton. But, we got 18 more of these conference games ready to go, and we're excited for that challenge.
And you get number 5 Texas in Edinburgh. How did you get the Longhorns to come to the Valley and that awesome matchup and the equality of opponent that provides for your team?
Well, we a couple of years ago during COVID, we were sitting in the airport in Phoenix. We had just played Grand Canyon and we were getting ready to fly to New Mexico State, and they had gotten COVID. So we lost that game at New Mexico State. Well, at the same time, Texas had lost their game with Baylor. Coach Vic called me, said, "Hey, I heard you guys lost a game. We did too. Why don't you come fly here and play us?" So we did it on a whim and played the next day at Texas, and he said he'd do us a favor. And here we are 2 years later. And it's just huge for the Valley because the Longhorns, the Cowboys, the Texas Rangers, Houston Astros, but Texas on the college is the mothership for us. Everybody's a Longhorn fan down here in the Valley, so it's not even it's good for Texas as well as it's good for us, because we're going to have probably our biggest crowd we've ever had. We're going to play at Bird Ogden Arena, where the Vipers play. Seats 9,000. We're hoping to get close to that. So it's going to be an awesome environment, and you get to play arguably one of the best teams in the country. What a better opportunity for our kids.
And, you just mentioned a lot of Longhorn fans in Edinburgh. And so are you expecting, a split fan group in there, or you think they're all turning, they live in the Valley, so you got to go UTRGV?
I think they'll cheer for both teams, but we're handing out as many T-shirts as we can when they walk in the door. So we're gonna try to make them wear the UTRGV, Rally the Valley shirts, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of Longhorn fans too.
And I did see it was a ugly sweater T-shirt giveaway. So I didn't know if you were planning on maybe rocking an ugly sweater for the game, kind of dress up.
I'm going to stay away from that one. My clothes are bad enough already, so I'll just stick with what I usually wear.
Don't say that. I know Ayanna Dorsey, we spoke with her at Basketball Media Day, but she's your team's leading scorer, averages nearly 17 points a game. How have you watched her just continue to develop as she progresses in her basketball career?
Well, I think, she's kind of in between a point guard and a combo guard. And we really like to play her on the wing or at the 2 spot, but she's kind of been having to be our point guard this year with injuries. And I think she's handled it really well. She's played through a really bad hamstring all year, but she's been tough and courageous. And when she scores, we're always those games that are close. That's why, because, she's putting up 25 or, getting us into our sets and doing a great job at the point guard position. So just to see her evolve from just kind of strictly a 2 guard to a point guard has been neat for us. And it's going to help us in the long run as well once we get a couple other point guards back.
Cade Hackerat is the team's second leading scorer, but she leads the team in rebounding. And I know she's probably had to adjust in, where she's had to play. What have you liked about her development, and how much of a difference maker can she be when she's that force on the glass?
Yeah, she's a tough player, great competitor, coach's kid. Her dad's our associate head coach. So she's been a really good transfer for us, came from a powerhouse Division II program, Central Missouri. And, she can put it on the floor. She can shoot the 3. But really what she gives us, like you said, is just her toughness on the defensive end. She's a great rebounder, a high IQ kid, and she's going to continue to get better as the league season goes on. And we're really excited about her.
You had mentioned earlier you guys were working on, having to be better shooting and also defensively, specifically in practice. Kind of what are your main focus that you look for as you prepare for a team like Texas to come in?
We got Corpus first, so we'll talk about them first. But our assisted turnover ratio is really poor right now, so that's been a really big focus for us. This 9-day break we've had, just fundamentals, taking care of the basketball, and then we've done a ton of shooting these last 9 days, just trying to get more confident and get back to what we know we can do, and that's put the ball in the hole. So that's really been our focus. Defensively, I think we've been pretty good all year. Rebounding is the one area that we got to finish plays with. We have a good initial defense, and then with lack of size that we've had at the first part of this year, it's kind of hurt our rebounding numbers. So we've been working hard at that, and so those are probably our 2 main focuses that we've been working on in this little break we've had.
Throughout this time with so many injuries and just people having to adjust, has anyone stood out to you in particular that's really risen to what you've asked of them?
Well, I think you talked about it earlier with Cade Hackerat. We thought she'd just be an off the bench role player for us, but she's had to come in and be a starter from day one, and she's responded. She's our second leading scorer, and she's our leading rebounder, and we expected her to be, an 18 to 20 minute a game person, and she's taken advantage of her opportunities, and she's been fantastic. She had a rough game against Corpus the last time, but I expect her to bounce back and have a great game tomorrow night.
How is that dynamic between having her dad on the coaching staff and having to balance, hey, I'm your dad, but I'm also your coach?
Well, he's probably harder on her than anybody, so I have to tell him sometimes, hey, man, take it easy on her a little bit. But no, it's been great. It's been, I mean, it's just neat to see the relationship that they have. And he has 3 daughters, and all 3 of them are here right now. And he's got one that's playing JUCO ball, and then one that's graduated from Kansas State, and then you got Cade here, and they're all here now for Christmas. And it's just fun to have that family oriented every day in practice and the way they interact. And Cade's gained a lot of respect from our teammates just with her work ethic, her leadership ability. And so, yeah, it's been fun.
I know it's a busy time, and you don't have a whole lot of break for holidays with practice and games, but wanted to ask if you were doing anything special for the holidays, if the team was kind of doing a special dinner or anything like that.
Well, we play Texas on the 20th, and then we're going to let the kids go home for a few days. I'm actually going to Jamaica with my daughter who just got married. So we're going to celebrate a little honeymoon with them. And so my wife and I are going to fly out for a couple of days, and then we'll be back for practice on the 26th.
Oh, man, Jamaica. That sounds awesome.
Yes. Can't wait.
All right. Well, Coach, it's been great speaking with you. UTRGV women's basketball will host Texas A&M Corpus Christi tomorrow, Thursday. That's a 6:30 p.m. tip-off on ESPN Plus Central Time. Head coach Lane Lord for UTRGV women's basketball. Thank you again for listening to the WAC Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the WAC Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And check out our website at wacsports.com.